What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today when I talk to you about SoundHound, I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. Starting off with data points, we have a couple big ones this week. So starting off on Tuesday, you have JOLT numbers. Forecast for that is 7.4. On Wednesday, you have GDP and also PCE. So that should make for a very volatile day. Manufacturing, so forecast for that is 47.2. If it does get above that 50, whether it be this report or the next one, that will signal more of an expansion occurring in the broader market. So that one will be a key one to really watch for. And then Friday, non-farm payroll and unemployment. As far as companies unveiling their earnings, you have a lot of big names, tech names, so that obviously will directly affect SoundHound and probably the broader market, but Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Apple, some big names, of course. So obviously a lot of fintechs and whatever during the kind of first half of the week, and then second half will be more tech related. So should again cause a lot of volatility, but all in all, SoundHound did do fairly well over this last week, up 24.44%. And so that is largely just due to optimism linked to the tariffs. Of course, there was a couple other catalysts here and there, but for the most part, if based on what Trump was stating for this upcoming week, that there is going to be deals coming, that will really push the broader market higher. So all of this was just potentials and optimism for at least what Trump was stating. So if we actually do start seeing deals come in, ideally even China, then the market's going to just rocket like crazy. So as far as a lot of the data points, yes, they are important. They could really move the market, but it is going to be tariffs. That is going to be the very big thing for the broader market. So at the end of the day, I feel like there's a lot more upside than down based on everything. When it comes down to shorts, 33.11% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 118.82 million shares. So on Friday, shorts did not increase 7.72 million. So this is Ortex adjusting 2 times per month. The NASDAQ or just exchanges in general do update what the true amount of shares are, and it's always delayed. So we did have that report come Friday after hours, and so it did signal that as of April the 15th, there was 119.67 million shares overall are being shorted. So that was a increase of roughly around 3-4 million from what we previously did know. So through the dark pool, there was a lot more abnormal transactions. So again, this is why I always like to bring up the dark pool, and if you start to see abnormal as far as frequency transactions, that could insinuate that shorts are fairly active and they're trying to kind of lay low under the radar, because dark pool is anonymous. It's technically was created for large entities just to avoid volatility in the broader market, but I think more and more manipulation is often enough kind of done through there now. So kind of sketchy stuff. But as far as going into this week, though, we have that 33.11%. So shorts have really been doubling down. Again, that did occur between March 31st and April the 15th. When it comes to SoundHound closing at 952, that does mean that the 950 and below strike prices are all in the money. So essentially, about 1.5 or 1.6 million shares do need to be covered by market makers, because market makers don't have a lot of volatile stocks such as SoundHound in their inventory. So they often enough have to go to the open market to buy any of the shares. And coincidentally, there was some abnormal activity after hours on Friday, so you did see some big transactions. And so 5.5 million, and so roughly about 500,000 shares were purchased in that one transaction. And then aside from that, a couple others. So most likely you could see a nice little bump up come Monday as market makers kind of cover the rest. So as far as some expectations for this upcoming week, though, you don't really see any crazy walls. So essentially, SoundHound could really move up from here. But aside from that, though, there isn't anything coming out from the company, at least that's planned for this upcoming week. You do have this, so that is on May the 8th. So they're going to be participating and doing a webinar, but again, that's the following week. So there isn't anything planned for this upcoming week unless it's kind of spontaneous or they just haven't disclosed it. But a couple key points to watch for with it at 9.52. It is trading between this R1 and the pivot. So 9.18 is going to be a strong support. Wasn't touched on Friday, but generally from what we've seen, it has been kind of generally strong. So something to take note of. Flip side, 10.67 is going to be that next strong target / resistance. So when it comes down to the actual chart itself, so it did bounce off of that super trend twice over the last 2 consecutive trading days. Positive note though, it did stay above that 50-day moving average. So insinuating, at least if history repeats itself, we should see a nice roughly 30 to 40% run up from here. So that's always a positive thing. The 50-day moving average and SoundHound, that's go hand in hand for kind of nice breakout territory. Only negative as far as on the actual chart itself though is the fact that it is rather overbought. But then again, given what happened to the market last week, pretty much every stock is overbought. So at the end of the day, nothing really wrong with that. If the market is correcting and if a lot of good news does continue to flow in, then yeah, it's going to keep moving higher. So let me know your general thoughts from that standpoint. But if it is able to get above this kind of $10 range, that's where the super trend is, so then that will signal a full-on trend change, and then you'll have algorithmic trading really buying it up. So similar to what happened right over here back in October, it did break above that super trend, signaling pretty much it moving higher from there. So at the end of the day, it is very close, inches away from really just seeing kind of the new highs once again. Things just need to keep going in its favor and just on a macro standpoint really coming out in a positive way. So it just needs to stay above that 50-day moving average as well as that 200. So that 200 is sitting at currently 901. 50-day moving average is $9.19. If for whatever reason it does really break out, that 100-day moving average is sitting at 1267. So all in all, big things might be coming SoundHound's way. I think ultimately, in order for it to be above that point, though, the upcoming earnings needs to really be a home run. So once we get closer to that date, I'll be going over what analysts are kind of doing. Because on a side note, analysts can change their estimates without changing their actual ratings itself. So I think a lot of people don't really understand that. But as far as the current estimates, so you do have -6 cents for the earnings per share, 30.38 million for the revenue, and then over the last 90 days you have 2 positive and 1 negative revisions for the earnings per share. So all in all, like I said, I think that might be the very big next catalyst for SoundHound. So let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. Throw your price predictions in the comments below. Do you think it is going to be kind of a little bit lower, stagnant, or do you think that we're going to be breaking out to this R2 and this R1? So I think given the circumstances, regardless, I think that we will be trading between this R2 and this R1, but you never know. If China deal does come in, then I could easily see us between this R3 and this R2, but it's all going to come down to the data points. Like I said, a lot of big ones are coming out. Even a lot of big names are unveiling their earnings, and then potentially, even based on what Trump stated and mentioned, there should be a lot more deals coming. So it's going to be a fun time to be in the market. So let me know your thoughts. Hopefully everyone's having a good weekend. And then one final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you are looking for some good signals, buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. So with all that said, appreciate all of you watching.